Welcome to Farm Connections. I'm your host, Dan Hoffman. On today's show, we find out what it means to be a dairy princess. JoAnn Lower shares with us a warm tale about a family quilt that has been passed down through the generations. Extension educator David Nicolai presents this episode's best practice, and we've got a new focus on 4-H. All here today on Farm Connections.
Welcome to Farm Connections with your host, Dan Hoffman.
Farm Connections made possible in part by
Alcorn Clean Fuel, a farmer-owned renewable energy producer in Claremont, Minnesota for more than 20 years, producing ethanol, high-protein livestock feed, and corn oil for resale to benefit its members and their communities. Absolute Energy, a locally owned facility, produces 115 million gallons of ethanol annually, proudly supporting local economies in Iowa and Minnesota. Absolute Energy, adding value to the neighborhood.
Back in 1944, Sam Bauer had a vision to provide tires and heating oil to families. This second and third generation family-run business is still focused on commercial truck, retread tires, tires for your passenger vehicles, and farm equipment too.
Novel Energy Solutions, committed to working with farmers and landowners to deliver a new crop, electricity. More about income potential and lease agreements designed to be top performers at novelenergy.biz.
My name is Anna Marie Sachs. I'm an Olmsted County Dairy Princess this year, and I'm also a finalist for Princess K of the Milky Way this year for Minnesota. I live on a small dairy farm right outside of Rochester, Minnesota, where we milk 70 cows, and I love working with my family every day. And here today, we are giving out free samples of chocolate milk and letting people pet and ask questions about a baby calf.
My name is Valerie Sauter. I am a Dodge County Dairy Princess and the 6th generation on my family's dairy farm outside Pine Island.
Well, my name is Kara Quam. I am the Goodhue County Dairy Princess this year.
My responsibilities include advocating for the dairy community. That is our main role all the time. We are the face that most people will remember because the farmers aren't always here. They are in the field working or taking care of their own problems at home. We are that bridge between them to share with consumers all the personal stories we've experienced on the farm or working on the farm that can encourage them to continue to learn about the dairy community. We share those stories and those facts that we know to really share with people what we care about.
The average American is actually 3 generations removed from the farm. So as dairy princesses, we're kind of serving that role of talking to people about something that they don't get to see every day. They don't get to experience the farm, but we do. We grew up on farms, we live on farms. We can talk to people about what agriculture is, what dairy farming is, and why we do what we do.
Growing up on a dairy farm, you're really pushed to do a lot of fun and hard things. It really helped me develop a work ethic that I'm really proud of today. Without that, I probably wouldn't be so driven to do all of these crazy things with leadership that I have come to do today. And I really appreciate what that has done for me. It taught me how to work with animals in a way. It also taught me how to communicate with people, because you're talking to people about different things every single day. Whether it's another farmer, you're talking to a feed salesman, you're talking to your nutritionist, you're talking to your vet. You're learning how to solve those problems with those people's help. It's also been really fun growing up on a farm. I wouldn't change that for the world. I have gotten to make so many fond memories with my cows as well as my family that I wouldn't change for the world. And that really pushed me to show people that what we do on the farm is very important to what happens out here in the world, because without farms you wouldn't have a whole lot to eat, to wear. It's kind of the backbone of America.
I talk to kids and sometimes they're like, milk comes from the grocery store, and there's a step before that, like I get to see that every day, but these kids don't really know because they are that 3 generations removed from the farm. So they don't really get to understand that milk comes from a cow and what goes into raising that cow and taking care of that cow so they can have milk on their table every day.
I would like people to understand more about agriculture in the dairy community. There are a lot of questions people have in this day that we didn't have years and years ago. I would like to kind of answer those questions for people and share what I know and to really gain the trust of the public so we can continue to produce that wholesome and nutrient-rich product that we really enjoy making every single day.
I'm actually most looking forward to our Breakfast on the Farm event at the end of the month, where we're going to have a lot of people from Rochester come out to a farm and have breakfast there. And I'll get to be there with the other princess from my county, and we'll get to talk to people about the farm that we're at, about what we do. Just getting to talk to people like that is my favorite part, and people who have genuine questions about dairy, about agriculture, and I can answer them, and I can tell them this is what we do, this is why we do what we do. I really love that.
So the Princess K program started about 65 years ago. This year will be its 66th year of having a Princess K the Milky Way. From years past, there's always been 12 finalists. This is the first year that they have 10 just for butter boost's sake, because every finalist gets a butterhead, kind of to commemorate their time as being a Princess K finalist. So they're doing that to really, at that time, to make those carvings extra special for those people. They serve as the goodwill ambassador for the state. Princess K goes around to schools, different events to really advocate for the dairy community, whether it's an NFL football game where she's working with Fuel Up to Play 60, or going to a small elementary classroom to really share her story with those kids. That is Princess K's main job, is to do that.
I think a lot of people love their butterheads. I have not gotten the chance to have one yet. I'm going to try and run next year. My mom actually was a butterhead a while ago, and so she has told me about that. She kept it for a couple of years in the freezer just because, just couldn't part with it. She just loved it. I know a lot of girls take their butterheads and they do local events with them. They do corn feeds or pancake feeds, something to use that butter to do something for the community.
I remember when I was 10, I saw someone I really looked up to become a finalist and then the top 3. She didn't get it, but it was really inspiring to see someone I knew over the years really push herself to do that. And I've seen people from then that I've known that I'm like, I want to do something like them someday. I want to try and be Princess K, to advocate for what I've grown up learning and to share my story with the dairy community.
So the next year upcoming as a dairy princess, we have a lot more summer events. We'll do a lot at the Dodge County Fair. There's one other princess in my county, so we'll be there the whole time, handing out ribbons at shows, working in the malt stand.
I'm really hoping to do a lot of fun things. There's a lot of Egg Olympics contests, which I've personally never gotten to compete in, but I would really like to try my hand at the butter carving event, just because I'm getting my head carved out of butter. I should know how to do it myself. And really working at the Moo booth and really interacting with those people, as well as being in the parade. That just seems like a whole bunch of fun, and hanging out with Fairborn and Fairchild to make those really fun, crazy memories.
One of the events that we got to do so far was a local parade. And so I really loved that. We got to see, it was in my hometown, so I got to see a lot of people I knew representing the dairy industry. One of my favorite things, there was this little girl outside a grocery store as we walked in. She looked up, she was like, "Hi, princess," and just kind of made my day. I turned and I talked to her for a little bit, and as I left, her mom was like, "Did you just meet a princess? That was so cool." And just getting to see that, I kind of made that little kid's day, just by being there and being a princess to her. So getting to represent that way too, and sometimes those conversations could lead to talking about dairy, sometimes not, but that's okay, you get to be part of somebody's day. We'll be doing some school visits this fall also to elementary schools, talking with kids, having some little activities for them to learn about dairy products. I'm excited for that. Then I'll go back to school in the fall. I go to the University of Minnesota, where I major in agricultural education and agriculture communication and marketing. And so doing a lot, this is the kind of stuff that I love, talking with people about agriculture. So I get to study that at school. I get to do it as a dairy princess. I'm really excited for that. So my mom was in radio for 30 years. So that's something that was really that she loved. And so I grew up kind of loving that too, loving talking to people, hearing people's stories, especially as that relates to agriculture. I love talking with people about agriculture and then talking to farmers too and getting their story and why they do what they do, because it's different for every person.
Whether or not I'm selected as the next Princess K, I'm hoping to go back into the classroom in some way. I'm going to be finishing up my degree in ag education at some point in the next few years from South Dakota State University, and I hope to come back to kind of this area of Minnesota and teach high school ag, even middle school, and really help those students learn about agriculture, not just dairy, because all aspects of agriculture are important.
Farms are growing, small farms are shrinking, and people are concerned about that. They wonder, why is that? And talking to people about, why that makes more sense for some people. For my family, when my mom was growing up, we milked 60 cows. Today we milk 500 because my cousins have come back to the farm. My uncles have raised their families there. There's more people on our farm than there were when my mom was growing up. So we've needed to change to make that more productive for our family so we can have people come back.
The other thing I hope to be doing in the future is helping my older brother run our family's dairy farm, which will be going on for about 5 generations now. which is something we're really proud of, and then bring in those future students of mine to really learn about working on a farm and develop that love for agriculture in the dairy community to keep those farms running and alive, to start that next generation of who's going to be on the farm.
Honestly, I love representing this industry so much. It's something I've been part of since I was a little kid. The first time I stepped into a show ring at the county fair, I was 3 years old, and I don't even remember the first time I helped with chores. So it's been something that's been part of my life for so long, and I love it so much. And so getting to talk to people about that and share why I love it, why my family has done what we do for over 100 years, is something that I really love and have a passion for.
Farm Connections Best Practices, brought to you by
Hello, I'm David Nicolai with the University of Minnesota Extension. In today's Best Practice segment, I'm going to talk about spray drift, and particularly when we talk about herbicide application in the state of Minnesota. In terms of spray drift, there's a classical definition of two different types of spray drift. One is a physical drift, where droplets move away from a nozzle and can become a contaminant not only in the field for farmers but also in the surrounding areas. And then there's also what we call vapor drift, which is a reaction from the herbicide or the pesticide itself being applied. Today I'm going to concentrate primarily on physical drift. In some of the measurements, when we talk about best management areas and practices that growers can implement to mitigate spray drift. In terms of spray drift itself, I think the good definition would be if we have a fine droplet that is coming out of a spray nozzle, oftentimes even in a 3-mile-an-hour wind, it can move as far as 44 feet, as opposed to a coarse droplet can move only 8.5 feet in a 3-mile-an-hour wind in those situations. So our concern here is what we can do to mitigate spray drift. A number of practices would include reducing the pressure, obviously, in the sprayer will help to make larger droplets. Also, in situations by lowering the spray boom, can help to mitigate spray drift, particularly from herbicides. But more importantly would be nozzle selection. And in nozzle selection, in a lot of today's nozzles, there are other alternatives than flat fan tips. These might be Venturi nozzles, they might be air-assisted nozzles. All of these different types that are available widely from manufacturers and dealers and applicators would help to produce larger droplets, particularly when we're applying systemic herbicides such as glyphosate and we wish to mitigate their effect. Keep in mind, though, if you are applying a contact herbicide, such as Liberty, etc., then we would probably want to use a finer droplet for greater weed control and efficacy with that. So again, spray drift is a concern, particularly when it can move off target. Some other things to keep in mind for growers, obviously, are the time of day when you do make applications. Avoiding windy situations. There is a sweet spot of 3 to 7 miles per hour that we recommend that growers strive to. Not always they can find that situation, but lower wind speeds. And then, of course, there are temperature inversions. And this is situations where we have warmer temperatures higher in the atmosphere, cooler temperatures down below, particularly from situations involving sunset through the evening till sunrise the next morning, and when we can get small droplets trapped in those situations. So avoid temperature inversions when you're making your applications in terms of herbicide drift management. That's today's best practice. This is Dave Nicolai with the University of Minnesota Extension. Thanks for watching.
She wrapped the quilt around little Floyd as he snuggled into her lap. Oh, she was old now. She could feel the pain all the way through to her bones. But she remembered. She remembered moving into the house after her children were grown, moving in with daughter Anna and her husband Earl. She looked at the quilt she hugged little Floyd. She wanted to leave him something that he would remember her by. Would he remember how much she loved him? She wrote a note. My dearest grandson, all the love I've known is sewn into this quilt and tied with a ribbon. Wrap it around yourself and you'll feel my love and the love of all the angels in God's heaven. Feeling the tiny stitches on the quilt, her mind went back to 1880, when she and her family had come from Norway to Nebraska. And shortly after, she met the most wonderful man she could even imagine. His name was Burgie Meyer. And she was the lucky person. She, Helene, was the lucky person to marry him. And then with 3 little boys in a covered wagon, they drove from Nebraska to Iowa. The only contact she had with her mother was through letters. Dear Mama, we've just arrived in Iowa and we're already planting in this beautiful, black, rich soil. We're living out of the wagon, but Burgie and I will soon start building a house. The boys need a little more space, and I would like a fireplace and a place to quilt. I'm going to have another baby, Mama. I hope this time it's a girl. The boys would like a sister. And Burgie, well, he doesn't mind if it's a boy or a girl. He just loves kids. 5 years later. Dear Mama, dear Mama, I've had a baby girl. I named her Anna. Thank you for sending me the fabric from my yellow dress. Yellow looks so good on Anna. Her red hair, her freckles. Oh, Mama, she's amazing. She's going to school with her brothers, and she's not even 5 years old yet. She can count, she can read. She is such a prim and proper little lady, except when she's digging fish worms or climbing trees. She's so much like me, Mama. A couple of years later, oh, Mama, I miss you. I've just given birth to our 7th baby, a beautiful little boy we named James. The midwife didn't get here in time, so Burgie and I delivered him together. I'm sitting with him by the fireplace in my rocking chair, starting another quilt. Burgie's out chopping wood. The Farmer's Almanac says it's going to be a snowier, colder winter than usual. So I've made enough quilts for every single window to cover the windows so that the cold Iowa, you know how those winter winds can be. I rendered lard today, Mama. And Burgie and I just sat and watched the kids as they stuffed those greasy cracklings into their mouth. Oh, Mama, my family is so beautiful. I am so lucky. Next summer, June 19th, 1901. Dear Mama, I'm sorry. I just don't feel like writing today. I'm enclosing an article from the Thompson Courier. The article read, Sheriff Art Ashpole's sanitary wagon hunted down and killed a bull today. The bull had attacked and killed Burgie A. Meyer. He lived on a farm 2 miles south of Thompson. Surviving are his widow, Helene, and 7 children. Her mind snapped back to the present as she held the quilt. Folding it, she put it at the end of little Floyd's bed. Would he grow into a wonderful man, a kind and loving man? Would he know how much she had loved him? 1976 found Floyd with the hands of a farmer and the heart of a grandfather, crocheting quilt squares, pink and white, white and pink. It wasn't long for this world. He had to leave his little granddaughter, Lori, something to remind her that he loved her more than anything. And so he wrote a note. My dearest granddaughter, all the love I have known is sewn into this quilt and tied with a ribbon. Wrap it around you and you'll feel my love and the love of all the angels in God's heaven. It's called The Quilt.
Hi, I'm Anna Perkle.
And I'm Julianne Panko.
And we are from the Lee Stewart County Lucky 4 4-H Club.
Our project is an analysis of natural soil amendments used to reduce the effects of road salt on switchgrass and ryegrass. Our project was inspired by Anna's grandparents. They live on a very busy road and noticed that in the spring a lot of the grass was dead where salt was applied to the road. We wanted to see what we could do to either fix this problem or find out what was causing it by using 2 different biochars and coffee grounds.
Our project consisted of planting 2 different types of seeds, which were switchgrass and ryegrass seeds. We then applied 3 different types of amendments, including biochar, naked char, and coffee grounds, to see if we could reduce the salt level when we added the salt to the mixture. The most interesting thing we learned while doing this project was how to test the salt level of the soil. We learned how to use a basic multimeter where we had to saturate the water and then place the prongs of the multimeter into the soil and salt mixture. The prongs then conducted the water and the salt because the salt acts like a metal, so it was able to tell us how many salt ohms were in the soil.
With the information we learned from this project, we are able to inform people of the positive effects biochar has on soil and also inform people how the sodium levels can be reduced by adding biochar to the soil. This cannot be implemented on a large scale yet, as you'd have to use a lot of amendment to soil, but it could even help farmers with their crops.
We're excited to see how biochar and these other amendments will be used in the future and see their positive impacts that they have on the environment.
It's been one of the wettest and coldest springs in history in Minnesota, and that's made it difficult for farmers trying to plant both corn and soybeans. The latest ag statistics say 66% of the corn is planted, with a 5-year average of 93%, and 35% of the beans are in the ground. The average is 77%. In simple terms, farmers need good weather, and they need it soon. Tom Hoverstead is with the Southern Minnesota Research and Outreach Center.
The last 10 days have been pretty bad. We haven't really got much done. So there is corn planted, a few soybeans planted. Fortunate ones got some work done. There was some people here that actually got started on Easter Sunday, which was plenty early, but the days have been few and far between. We've just had too much rain. It's been very cold, very wet through May.
The research station keeps records of moisture and heat units every year, and this one has been very wet and very cloudy.
We've seen 181 growing degree units. Normal for this time of year would be about 300, so we're over half a normal, about 60% of our normal growing degree units. So we really need some heat to get the corn that's planted out of the ground and move it along. I'd expect corn to be at about the 4-leaf collar stage now, and a lot of it, what is up is in about the 1 collar stage, and a lot of it's still to come up.
Wet spots from small ponds to complete fields are a common sight across Minnesota, and that is very frustrating for Minnesota farmers.
Well, this has been a wet May. We're over 6 inches of rain. It's not our wettest May, but take the combination of cold and wet, it's probably one of the worst on record. Eerily close to 2013, and we all remember that as the year that there was a substantial amount of prevent plant acreage in Minnesota.
Too much rain being talked about all over the country. Minnesota is no exception. I've heard from many farmers who have not turned a wheel yet this year, even in areas here in southern Minnesota where things are a little bit further ahead of that. It's still a late year. This is Lynn Kettleson reporting.
By maintaining our traditions, we honor our heritage and provide our communities with a rich tapestry of stories to share for the future. Thanks for joining us today on Farm Connections.